of a shot of winning. We can beat anybody in the world, and I think we're going to win next Sunday.
And welcome back to the New York Jets Atlantic Flight Podcast. We have a full house over here in the Atlantic Jets Flight Podcast. Joining us today, as usual, is Daniel. And we've got Paddy. He's finally made it. Nice to see Paddy. And we've got a very special guest joining us today, Andres Groves. If you don't know who Andres Groves is, he had probably the premier podcast in the UK for a couple of years, I think it was at least. He'll put us right on that. The Jets UK. Without further ado, hi guys. Hi Andres. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Before we get started, Paddy, Andres, Daniel, Andres, introduce yourselves.
I think
Hi there.
Desiree took care of that.
So,
Yes,
Andres,
hello.
we have just had probably, I think, arguably the worst season that most Jets fans, other than the Kotar era, have had. I would actually argue that this last season was actually worse than the Kotar era, because the Kotar era we actually had a really good team that was just run by a moron, and this year it was similar. There was a lot of similarities. But tell me, what are your thoughts on the season that we've just had, and how do you think that we will be moving forward? Andres?
Did we lose Andres?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, cuz you're cutting out a little bit, so I didn't know if you were referring it to me.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Andres.
So you're
Let
throwing it
us
to
know
me?
your thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
it's your turn,
Okay. My
Andres.
thoughts.
Just
My
let us
thoughts.
about your thoughts of the season last year.
Yeah. The biggest drop between expectation and reality, right? It's kind of. I think that's what was the worst thing. I think we've seen worse Jets teams for sure in terms of the quality of, you go through those Gase years, the quality of the team was atrocious. But at least we were like rooting for the tank, and you had something to kind of go for in a kind of morbid way. This year, we had high hopes coming off obviously the devastating 23 season with Rodgers going out straight away. You're hoping that he'll come back and he'll be mediocre, decent, and the rest of the team will be good enough to this playoff drought and maybe go even further. And it couldn't be further from what actually happened. So I think that drop between what we were hoping for and what actually happened is what made it such a terrible season.
Well, did you actually go to the London game this year?
I mean, I've been to practically all the London games, whether they're Jets or not. So yes, I did go to the London game, and it was, I mean, that was part of the story was Rodgers going down, and we could tell he got quite hurt in the game, and then he kind of trucked on for a couple more weeks when he was clearly not healthy, instead of letting Tyrod kind of spell him and maybe have better performance from the QB position. Rodgers obviously thinks even at 50% capacity, he's better than Tyrod, so he must still play. And I think that was where the season went off the rails, and that was it, really.
Yeah, for me personally, the London game, seeing the Vikings play up until that point, I hadn't really paid too much attention to the all 22. But when you go to see the game in real life, it is live all 22. And I'll be honest with you, I got a shock exactly how bad the entire team was, in coaching staff as well. And that for me was the light bulb moment that I knew that things were really, really bad and they weren't going to get any better. Did you have a light bulb moment yourself?
Well, if you want from me, Gus, you kind of cut out there a little bit, but my light bulb moment was when they fired Saleh. That was my light bulb moment. Actually, I would say this. My light bulb moment was actually week 4 against Denver, because when the Jets started with the ball, and on the very first play of the Jets having possession of the ball, they sacked Rodgers. And right off the bat, after that sack, I just said to myself, oh my God, they came to play. I mean, I just said to myself, I don't know what they're going to do on offense, but for the Broncos, defense was going to set the tone. And I immediately got concerned. And then when Robert Saleh got fired, coming back from London after the loss to the Vikings, then I was not happy with that decision by Woody Johnson. Look, we can all admit that the coaching was horrible. We can all admit that the coaching was terrible. That it just didn't feel that Saleh was himself during the training camp process and going into the start of the season. He just didn't feel like himself, the energy coming out of his body that he normally has at press conferences. So all I can is that it's a combination of everything, but the only difference between the Rich Kotite era and what happened last year. Leon Hess did not fire Rich Kotite in the middle of the year. He basically, Kotite said, I'm stepping down. He didn't get fired. He got stepping down. Woody Johnson just said, that's it. I'm done with Robert Saleh. I'm done with this already. You're gone. He put in Ulbrich, and unfortunately, Ulbrich was just overwhelmed, not just as interim head coach, but also being the defensive play caller, being the defensive coordinator for the Jets. So all I can say is that's where the real disaster came. Because I think if Saleh remained as head coach for the entire year, maybe they would have edged themselves back into the playoffs. But in reality, it just really fell apart from the Denver game till Saleh got fired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it, Paddy. I feel we're going to be crying into our tissues by the end of this. What was your light bulb moment when you thought, okay, this isn't gonna happen this year?
That's the question, isn't it? I think there was multiple throughout the year, but I mean, I have to agree with Daniel. Not necessarily. I'm not going to say exactly the same things he said, but for me, it was the fact that we didn't score against Denver. It was just a terrible, terrible game. And watching that, that was when I thought maybe this offense that we were promised was going to change the fate of our team isn't going to show up. Obviously, that was our fourth game of the season, so we'd been embarrassed by the 49ers run game, then beat two teams that we should have beat in the Titans and Patriots, and then we should have been 3-1. Really, when you look at the way we were all talking about the team, the way that we were kind of competent against the Titans and the Patriots, we should have carried that on against the Broncos, but then we just didn't show up. And maybe as Daniel said, it was because of that early sack, and maybe Rodgers kind of retreated into himself and maybe got a bit scared of, the contact with, obvious flashbacks to what happened to him in the Bills game the year before. And then as that game went on, I thought maybe the defense is still going to be good enough this year to get us, to make up when the offense doesn't show up. And then obviously Bo Nix scores, he throws that touchdown, or did he run it in? I can't remember now. It's that long ago and I've pushed it out of my mind. But then you go, oh, okay, let's see what happens now. And then you think, oh, thank you, Greg Zuerlein's going to rescue us, stop us embarrassing ourselves. And then obviously we all know what happened there. I think that game, all three parts of the team had an opportunity to save us from embarrassing ourselves in different ways. I don't think the defense was terrible in that game, but obviously they could have stopped us. They could have stopped us conceding to Bo Nix, but they didn't. And that was kind of like I say as much as a light bulb moment. It was almost like our whole season in one game where everyone let us down across the board.
But let me just say this, Paddy, and you are correct about that. You have that opportunity by the Jets to try and get that touchdown where they were on the 1 yard line due to the pass interference flag, and they couldn't even bang it in.
Sorry,
They
Daniel, to cut
couldn't
in.
bang it.
I've forgotten it. Is that the play where we tried to throw it to Solomon Thomas, or am I thinking of a different game?
You're thinking of a different game.
Okay, apologies.
Yeah, that's all right. No worries. You couldn't bang it into the end zone. You're on the 1 yard line of Denver, and you couldn't run it in. You couldn't even, do a quarterback sneak. You couldn't do anything. Nothing imaginative. Nothing. And then you have to settle for the field goal. That should have been a touchdown. But I will also say this. While I'm not happy Zerline missed a 50-yard field goal to win the game by 11 or by 12-10, that game, he should never have had that opportunity to begin with.
Exactly.
The Jets should have taken them down and taken them out. Period. I understand, you're trusting Zerline to give you a game-winning field goal. He's had hit it from 50 yards or more in the past. He's reliable on that, but I'm sorry. That particular game should never have come down to him at that point. It should have been either a blowout or you should have won comfortably.
But
Period.
then I agree with you, and that's my point really. All three teams had an opportunity. Yeah, special teams winning us the game on that kick would have been. None of us would have been proud of it, but it would have been a win. Yes, and that's where I agree with you. The defense and the offense both had opportunities to make that game a lot more comfortable than it obviously wasn't. And that's why I say that the offense not turning up in that game, that was the big. You kind of sit back and you go, maybe this isn't everything we were promised. And then obviously as time's gone on, obviously the week after that is the Vikings game, and I was there watching the game, and you watch Aaron Rodgers throw 2 interceptions, and again you sit there and you think, right, okay, this is what we're in for another season of, is it? It's just kind of beating the teams we should beat.
Yeah.
And then the teams where it's more of a 50-50 matchup, we seem to just not show up at all. Yeah.
And that was absolutely gutting to be there and watching that live. He's gone. Aaron Rodgers has gone. There's news now coming out. Heavy rumours, and I do believe there is some substance to this. It's really, really odd. So the Giants are actually in exactly the same position as we were last year. So you've got Dable and Sean and all the rest of the Giants front office. They're on the hot seats now. And so now they need to get a vet in to try and rescue the season. So there is a lot of chit chat that Aaron Rodgers might be on his way to the Giants. The first musical chair has taken place. Domino, whatever you want to say. Matthew Stafford has now re-signed with the Los Angeles Rams. So it's going to be interesting because we've got free agency coming up soon. Obviously, the top man there is going to be, believe it or not, Sam Darnold. So when you look at picks from 1 to 7, really, there could be a situation where there's only 2 teams that will need a quarterback, us being one, the Raiders being another. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in this next few weeks. I think, free agency starts on March the 12th, I believe it is. But Andres, how do you feel and what do you think the Jets need to do to get better quickly? Do you think that they're going to make a push for the playoffs this year? I mean, Glenn has said it's win. We're in this to win now. So do you think that is what their mandate is? They're going to try and do the playoffs, or do you think it's more of it's just words, it's motivation? Or do you actually think he actually means that? Do you think that they're going to make a push to try and make the playoffs?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to come in with the attitude of just kind of like, tanking the season and let's have a big 5-year runway to get things sorted. This team has got enough young players, there are holes on the team on both sides, especially on the defense now, but there's enough quality on both sides of the ball where you could plug a few gaps, get a few key additions, use the draft and the free agency period, and make a push to. I mean, there's 7 slots now for the playoffs, and still the Jets managed not to be able to get in for countless years. So I do think that they're going to give an effort to try and be competitive and try and even if you just get that kind of that monkey off your back and just get in, even if you go out the first round, at least now that's gone out the way and you can start to kind of build and say, okay, moving in the right direction. I mean, you just look at the way that like I said, you look at the offense. You say you would believe your number one receiver. You've got a good stable of running backs. The offensive line looks decent. Obviously, right tackle. We'll see what happens with Morgan Moses. But you've got enough quality there. Obviously, the quarterback position is major. But if you think where these guys are coming from, Detroit, where Glenn's coming from, and obviously the offensive coordinator now in Strand. Yeah, they're seeing it. They've done it without having a Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes, a top end quarterback in play in Goff, and they've been able to make it work. So you've got a model there that works. I think come in, change the attitude, and change the environment. I think last year, just to tap on to my point of last year was it seemed to be like there was kind of a savior syndrome where all the young players, we saw Rodgers like, oh, we finally got him back now, and he's going to take us to where we need to go. And I think it just took 5%, 10% off their own individual performances. They kind of took their foot off the gas a little bit, like they had to with Zach Wilson. They knew there was such a small margin for error with him, and they thought Rodgers would paper over the cracks and he would carry them, and he just wasn't able to do so. And that's when the whole thing collapsed. So I think Glenn comes in, changes the attitude, changes the mentality of these players, and I think they're going to go for it, and we'll see how successful they are at it.
Do you think they'll take a quarterback in this year's draft?
Yeah, but I don't. Well, we'll see if they want to reach and trade up for Cam Ward. I know there's some talk about that, whether they're going to go for a high round draft pick. I definitely think you should take a stab at this draft class, whether it's in the 3rd round or the 4th round, maybe. If you get clever with, you say, okay, we've got Rodgers, we've got Devonta Adams, they want to be paired together. You send them across to the other guys over in the city, and you say, if that happens, if that's what ends up being an option, and you say, let's get something for them. Can we get something from the Giants? Can we move, for example, from they got the first round, they got the first pick in the 3rd round. Can we move from where we are in 92nd pick, which is at the end of the 2nd round, move up to the top of the 3rd round, and then you can get your pick of QBs who make it to the beginning of the 3rd round. So I think there's ways you can actually kind of get extra value in the middle of the draft to go get one of those guys in the middle, bring in a vet or stick with Tyrod, get one of those mid-round draft picks, and then see where you are next year, where the draft class looks even better than it does this year.
And I've got one last question for you on this.
Mm-hmm.
If you were sitting at 7 and you couldn't find a draft partner, I'm looking at the draft now, and I quite honestly, there is about 10 players that I would take at 7. Who you are making that pick? Who are you taking at 7?
I mean, it depends on who's there, right? I mean, if
Yeah.
Mason Graham somehow makes it back to you, I'm hearing that he may not get back. He'll be great to pair next to Quinnen. You look, maybe they need another receiver across from Garrett. You go for Ted McMillan. I'm not a big draft guy. I'm not really into the class at this point as strong as I will be, say, in the next couple of months. And so, but just from an idea point of view, you think, can you trade up? Can you trade down? Maybe if you trade down, because I hear, you hear that the quality of the class from like picks kind of 9, 10 through to the end of the 1st round, at the beginning of the 2nd round, is kind of the same. So maybe you can trade down. We always say this, right? It's kind of a meme at this point where we always say we're going to trade down, and finally we might be able to do it, just because you think we don't need a lot of blue chip players. We need quality depth, quality players who are going to be the secondary guys who are going to be next to Quinnen, who are going to be opposite from Source, who's going to be opposite from Garrett. You've got those top end players. What you need is really good second guys who are going to be quality players, and fill in and kind of be solid and have a high floor. So there's a lot of options, and it'll be very interesting to see what this regime feels about, in terms of what's their mentality. Do they want to get aggressive and move up? Do they want to settle back and get extra picks? We'll see. It's very hard to tell because you just don't know how these guys operate, obviously, with them just coming in.
I've got a question for you, Daniel. As we've discussed, I don't think any of us are really into the draft. As you've just said there, Andres, we've got a couple of guys on the pod that will be doing a pod tomorrow, and they are heavily into the draft. And we'll put out this podcast tomorrow about the draft. But the quarterbacks in this class, outside of Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, it's not really a good class. It is a quarterback class that's developmental. I think most people would agree with that. So, for example, we don't take a quarterback at 7, we take something else. But then you've got someone like maybe Will Howard, who I wouldn't mind taking. Jackson Dart, a lot of people are high on Jackson Dart. So we're sitting in the second round, and say those two quarterbacks are still there at the bottom end of the first round. Daniel, are you pulling the trigger to go up and get them? And I'll tell you for why. Basing this as a quarterback draft that is developmental. If you take them in the first round, you get that extra 5th-year option. So would you pull the trigger and take one of those quarterbacks in the back end of the first round?
Honestly, I would not. I mean, no offense to Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders or Jackson Dart or even McCord that comes from Syracuse. Look, I feel that at this point in time, that at quarterback would be a mistake. Now, here's the only way that I would feel comfortable if the Jets do decide to take a quarterback. Obviously, the free agency period is going to start, which we're already in the month of March. It's going to start in 9 days, the free agency period. If the Jets can find certain positions to fill in the free agency department that I feel comfortable with, then I can say, you know what, let's go for the quarterback. So I just want to throw that out there right now because I believe at this point in time that this draft class is more filled with defensive tackles, offensive tackles. We don't have that right tackle to solidify that offensive line to protect the quarterback. So that's why I keep arguing with other Jet fans on social media who keep saying, this is my quarterback. That's my quarterback. This is my quarterback. Oh, we should have gone after Brock Bowers last year. Bowers would have been so great for us. And I keep telling them, oh, sure. Yeah, let's draft Brock Bowers. And, let Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses be the revolving doors that they became. Obviously, Morgan Moses more through injury, but Tyron Smith just absolutely fell apart. So if we didn't draft Olu Fashanu, then, Rodgers would be on his back every single down, every single play. So until I feel comfortable about the holes that are, that I feel are the majority of the major issues we have on this team, I don't want a quarterback. But if Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn can find the right people, whether it is, Muji can steal somebody from Denver, Aaron can steal somebody from Detroit and, put him on the line for either offense or defense, then I can say, you know what? Let's trade up for a Cam Ward, for a Shedeur Sanders. Let's go for that quarterback in the first round. But until then, I will not go for a quarterback. If I'm going to go for a quarterback, I'm hoping Dart or McCord will fall into the later rounds, hopefully the 3rd or 4th round, because I want to save the first 2 rounds for those picks for either, and these are my top 3 positions that the Jets should draft for need: right tackle, interior defensive lineman to stop the run, edge. Those are the two of those three key positions the Jets need to not only solidify to stop the run, but to protect the quarterback as well.
Basically, you're trotting out Bill Parcells' mantra of you build through the trenches.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
Paddy, would you go? There's some decent quarterbacks in free agency. Do you think that it's worth pursuing another quarterback in free agency to pair with Tyrod Taylor? I do believe that there's a good chance that Tyrod Taylor will be the starting quarterback this year. But as we know, he hasn't been that durable. But given what Daniel's just said, and I agree with what Daniel said, if we beef up that O-line, and there's a good chance that we could do that, I think you're right, Daniel. I think we make unsexy picks this year. We beef up the D line, we beef up the O line, and then start plugging in players, skilled players later on in the draft. But I think early and often that we will be doing just as what you've just said. So to Paddy, getting back to that question, bearing in mind, say for example, that is the route that we go down. Do you think we're not better off actually trading or picking up a free agent quarterback? Because there are some relatively decent journeymen out there to be had to pair with Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question, isn't it? Because I think, I mean, we've had this discussion before off the pod that I think my number one kind of quarterback option at all really would be Justin Fields. Just because I'm not completely sold on. Sorry to go back to the draft. I'm not completely sold on trading up for Cam Ward or Shador. I don't want Shador at all, but I'm not comfortable with trading up for Cam Ward either at the moment. That might change. I think the Justin Fields issue would be obviously fairly unproven. Probably he's got a lot more people that say he can't run an offense than people would look at him and say, yeah, he can do that. I thought he was decent at the Steelers last year. I'm not looking for him to come in and, set the world on fire with his play. But obviously he would want to come in as the starter if he comes in at all, because we still don't know if the Steelers are going to let him go yet. Obviously his contract is up, but I've said before, the fact they've let Russell Wilson go so early tells me that they're at least keen on keeping Fields. So we'd have to see what happens there.
That's.
But then,
Sorry,
go on.
Go on.
I was going to say, but then we've got two players then who, if we're saying that Tyrod is going to be the starter,
But
what conversations are we going to have with Justin Fields to convince him that no, we actually want you to start?
you actually bring up an interesting point, because every time that I've had conversations with people, maybe you should shed some light on this, Andres. Every time I've heard that Justin Fields could possibly become a pickup for the Jets, I've also automatically assumed that he would be backing up Tyrod. So do you think, Andres, that if Justin Fields did come to the Jets, that he would want to start? That's not something I've even considered. I just assumed that Tyrod would be starting.
Yeah, I think that if I think Justin Fields is going to be looking for options where he could start, and I think Tyrod Taylor, with his injury history, and I think the Jets would give him a shot to compete for a start. I think it would be a competition, and I think for Justin Fields that might actually be with the quality around him, obviously with a former teammate in Garrett Wilson, who's obviously a great player, and obviously he knows how good he is as well from their time at Ohio State. I think there's things about the Jets that would appeal to Justin Fields that would say this is my best shot to maybe to get on the field to win the competition, or even if I don't, I'm in a room where I could have a legitimate start and get myself playing in, and because I think he had a really good start to the season. Obviously, Tomlin stayed pat and said I'm going to go back to Russell Wilson when he comes back, and that ended up working out for them. And but Justin Fields actually was deserved of keeping his role. It was just obviously Tomlin's said he never, a player will never lose their position because of injury, so he kind of stuck by that. But I think Justin Fields did well, and I think he wants to prove it again. that he can be an NFL starting quarterback. So I think the Jets are one of the teams that give him the best shot. And I think even if it's not a guarantee where we say you will be the starter, I think him coming in and saying you have a legitimate chance to be the starter would be enticing to him with what else is around him at the Jets.
Yeah, it's got to hurt when he was on with the Steelers. He was playing really, really well for the Steelers. And then all of a sudden Tomlin, who I think is a bloody excellent head coach, by the way, suddenly pulls him and starts Russell Wilson. That's got to hurt, hasn't it?
So sorry to cut in here. I did have a theory about this in whether it was to do with compensation to the Bears on, playing time, or whether it's snap count or percentage of games started or whatever. Because it seems strange to me that they just, without even really, obviously, they must have had discussions on the inside if it's not the case, but they seem to just go, yeah, no matter what happens, we're going back to Russ. So I did think, is there more to it? And that's kind of also built up this idea in my head that they don't want to let him reach free agency. They just couldn't, well, they didn't want to spend any more compensation wise on playing him when they had Russ on the roster for, what was it, $1 million a year. So yeah, who knows?
Daniel, what do you think? Should we pick up a free agent quarterback, or should we just go with what we've got at the moment? We've got Adrian Martinez, Jordan Travis, and we've got Tyrod Taylor.
Well, with Jordan Travis, I've always said that, I want to see what he has. I mean, I understand that, the broken ankle he suffered in college in his senior year was a big letdown, obviously, to his draft status. Even though the Jets did pick him up late in the draft last year, still though, I'm hoping he's 100% healthy, and that he can participate in OTAs, in training camp, because, look, I want to see what he has. And maybe if the Jets do not draft a quarterback and he can show that he's capable of doing great things, then for goodness sakes, why not? I mean, Tom Brady was a very low draft pick coming out of Michigan. And look what he did for the Patriots. So, I mean, that's the only example I can give where I feel like, maybe Jordan Travis can be that guy. Maybe Adrian Martinez can be that guy too, if they're just given a chance. We'll see what happens. But normally, I probably would have gone into the free agency market for another quarterback. Possibly Justin Fields. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing the connection with him again, and Jeremy Ruckert and Garrett Wilson, because they were his quarterback in college. So I wouldn't be opposed to it. To be honest with you, Gus, all options are on the table for me. Mm-hmm. All options. You can either stick with Tyrod, or you can bring over Justin Fields. Either way, it's fine by me. I'm not picky right now because, I don't know what goes on, in the UK with your fellow Jet fans over there, or I know there's a Swedish Jet fan contingency. There's also a Japanese Jet fan contingency. I don't know what they think, but, being here in the States, trust me, there's a war of words going on here in the New York, New Jersey area, in the United States, up and down. Even in Canada, we got Jet fans over in Canada. What do we want here? What are we looking for? Who do we want to draft? And there are those who are saying, and there are those, yeah, and there are those who are saying, like myself, I don't want to draft a quarterback in this draft. I would rather stick with Tyrod or go get a Justin Fields, or see what we have in either Adrian Martinez or Jordan Travis, if he is 100% healthy and he's able to stay in the pocket and put weight on that ankle. So, it's basically a mixed bag over here. So that's what it is. I'm not opposed to getting Justin Fields, but if they're going to use Tyrod Taylor, I'm not opposed to that either.
Can I just jump in on one thing, on just pivoting off Daniel's point? The only issue I'll tell you, I think if you don't want to go with someone in the draft, I'm completely okay with using the kind of mid rounds to beef up the other positions, and seeing what you've got with Jordan Travis and Martinez, I think you have to get another vet in because of Tyrod is a really good player, but he has obviously shown a very long track record of not being able to stay healthy. And I just can't see it going well that you go into the season with Tyrod, with rookie maybe from the mid round, and then you go with Jordan Travis. I mean, you mentioned Tom Brady, but for as many Tom Bradys who are late round draft picks, there's a bunch of other guys who you've never even heard of around the league who never make it. And I hope that Jordan Travis becomes that guy, but we just don't know. And statistically, it probably isn't the case. And I would say get another vet in. So you've got insurance should Tyrod go down, and you can keep the train moving so that your young players don't get disillusioned with yet another false start. Because you've got to make that first right impression with this young core. Because you saw Quinnen again when they moved on from Rodgers, he wasn't happy. He goes another rebuild, and you understand. There's like how many times the guy's been here since 2019. He's seen so many false horizons. I think you have to build it with some, not say, are we going to have a moonshot that Jordan Travis becomes a starter? The likelihood is that he doesn't. So you've got to have two good starters, have Travis in there as, say, your rookie in a sense, instead of having drafted one, having the rookie. I think it's essential that you get Fields or Winston or another starter who can at least run the ship if Tyrod goes down. I think it's essential. It really is, from my perspective, at least.
I'm going to throw a bombshell in here. I've thought this for a while. If you've ever seen the break Jordan Travis had, it is not very pleasant. It's X-rated. He took a setback last year in his rehab. Not really sure why there was a setback. I can't find anything on it. And believe me, I've tried. I can't find any medical explanation of what's actually going on with him. But my gut feeling is, for a guy that big, that mobile, playing the position that he is trying to play, I think by the time he actually gets fit enough to actually throw a ball, I don't think he's going to have a contract. My gut feeling is that he's not going to be on the Jets come game one. I do believe he's going to get cut. I think this injury is a lot worse than we think it is. I mean, I know what you're saying, Daniel. There's people over in the States, there's people here that seem to think that Jordan Travis is the guy because he played so well in Florida, and he did, that he's going to be our quarterback moving forward. But this injury is more serious than I think people realise. But we will see.
No, I agree with you, Gus. Gus, I agree with you. No, it was a very serious injury, and I'm not, look, I just want to see what he has. I'm not saying he's the next guy, but I just want to see what we have in him, and that's all it is. And if he can't do it, then we move on, and that's fine by me. I don't want to say anything negative about the kid. I really don't. I just want to see what we have in him. But look, if he's not able to do the job that I think, or some Jet fans think he can do, then I'll be fine with it and say, you know what, look, he gave it a shot. It didn't work. Move on. Let's find somebody else. That's all.
Guys, is there any other quarterbacks on the free agency market? I've got someone that I'm probably going to make you shout at me when I suggest this.
Everybody duck, here it comes.
I look at the free agency market, and there's one guy that I think could quite honestly do a job. After what we've seen with Sam Darnold, is ex-New York Giant, who's now in Minnesota, Daniel Jones. Is he worth kicking the tires on? And let's be realistic. Daniel Jones.
They're not letting him go. He's the backup, isn't he, for JJ? He's going to be the backup for JJ. They're going to let Sam hit the market, and then he's JJ's backup who'll be able to help not rush JJ back after he's come back from injury.
But if he was,
I don't think he's going to be available, to be honest.
You don't? No, I think that's a really good shout. Actually, that's something I didn't think of.
But he's the kind of player I wouldn't mind. That kind of type of player. I just think that's him specifically won't be available. But you don't have to go for Justin Fields or Jameis Winston or someone who's a bigger name. You can go for someone who can kind of, you say Tyrod's a guy that we like to start, and then if he does get injured, we need someone who can kind of keep things moving, who can kind of run the offense at a decent level. So people like Garrett, you know, and the other offensive players don't feel like another year's wasted. The defense doesn't have to go through another game where they keep the other team under 10 points and lose the game and have that heartbreak again. We just can't continue. We have to have some sort of you know, just kind of normal level of, you know, like of game planning where you can't just say hit and hope every single time. And when it doesn't work, it all falls apart. We have to have some sort of kind of, you know, not hoping for people. Like I said, Jordan Travis is, like you said, is a long shot. We've got to have someone else in there because we know Tyrod's going to just get a hit and be out for a couple of weeks. It's just, you know, you can see it already happening now already.
What about the second coming of Teddy Bridgewater? He's a Detroit free agent. Obviously, Aaron Glenn would have dibs on Teddy Bridgewater.
He's coaching high school now, isn't he?
Is he?
I believe so, yeah.
Right. Well, that's another
Let
one.
me double check that. Yeah, I thought he was coaching high school last year.
Who's
I
this?
think he's coaching.
Teddy Bridgewater.
Oh,
So.
yeah, he is. He's coaching high school.
But
Yep.
you got people. Yeah,
Huh. I don't know, Wikipedia still got him down as a Lions quarterback, so maybe he's doing both. Yeah,
Well,
I didn't even realise he was still on the team. I thought when I saw him coaching high school, I thought he'd retired.
I did as well. I assumed that he was in the league. So there's one other player that I think is probably worth kicking the tyres on, and that's Trey Lance, who's at Dallas. But does anyone have any views? Do you think he'll stay in Dallas, be a backup to Dak still?
I'm not
I don't have
sure
any interest
because
in Lance particularly. I'd rather
I'm not interested in him
have
either.
Cooper Rush, to be honest.
I was going to bring up Cooper Rush. I'm glad you saw him first.
No.
I like him.
Yeah. I think he's interesting. He seems again one of those guys who can just keep things going. Yeah.
He was exactly.
There's some interesting names. Like I said, we're not reaching for those style players, so we just.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want Dak Prescott either. I would rather just let him stay in Dallas and go somewhere else because look, Dak. What can we say about Dak? Really? It's just not worth it. I'd rather have. I agree. If Cooper Rush was available, I would bring him over instead.
Mm-hmm.
My only concern with Cooper Rush is he can't really move, which, depending on what type of offense we want to have, will probably limit how effective he would be, even more than his talent.
So, getting back to what's going on right at this moment, let's bring in this up to date. Is right at this moment, as we're speaking now, the combine is going on in Indy. It's as we're recording this, it's Saturday, so it's quarterbacks and receivers that are getting tested. We had Cam Ward take the podium yesterday in his presser, and he did say, "I know it would be elite, especially with the receiving core that they have and the defense they have." Ward said of the possibility of joining the Jets. Being able to talk to the head coach for the first time was exciting. So I think the Jets are not too far off a couple of pieces. I'm just hoping I can be one of them. Is there a world in where the Jets will be could trade up? Personally, I think it would be a huge idea because we have so many holes. If you go through the roster, there's roughly 23, depending on who you're looking at, there's roughly 23 to 28 players that you'd probably keep on the Jets. The rest, you're probably letting go. But obviously, we can't let all of them go. We're going to have to re-sign some of them, possibly one-year deals. But could you see a world, Andres? I'll put this one to you first. Could you see a world in where we do trade up?
Honestly, I don't think so. I think, yeah. You want me to? Is it thrown to me, Gas? Yeah. Honestly, I don't think you would. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, you never say. You look at the roster, you look at what's needed, And I think they look at it and go, yeah, I don't think it's the year to be kind of giving all these assets to go up from 7 to, it would have to be 1. I don't think you get it. I think whoever goes up to 1 gets Cam Ward and gets the quarterback who is clearly, I think, the best, because I think Sanders is a good player, but he comes with so much baggage that I think for some teams you just can't entertain it with the whole Dion situation. So Cam Ward's the guy. He's probably the number 1 quarterback for most teams. You'd probably have to go to round 1. We'd have to give up so many assets, and you'd just be mortgaging the future when we've got so many holes. I think I think you stay pat where you are at 7. You get a good player, or you trade down, and you try to get some players kind of in the second and third round with some of the compensation you might get for a team trading up to 7. And then you look at next year, because next year you never know how it's going to work out, but on the face of it, it looks like a much better quarterback class. And then you can do what we did in 2009, where we were aggressive. We went up and got Sanchez. Now Sanchez eventually didn't work out, but look at how it started. We were able to support his rookie struggles within the team was full of quality on both sides of the ball. And we were able to have a lot of success, even with him, despite of his rookie struggles at times, because of how good the team was. And I think that's how you build it. You get the rest of the team ready, and then go get that quarterback and be aggressive next year. Be aggressive and go get the quarterback in a class that, on the face of it, looks better.
I think I have to say this is where I am with drafting, especially the hardest position to fill in all of sports. You have to pick what's on offer. I agree. Next year's quarterback class, on paper, if they all declare, if they're not injured, and we're in a position where we're able to pick a quarterback, so we'd need to be where we are now or higher, which means we've had a bad season. If they're all available, absolutely don't take a quarterback this year and take one next year. But hopefully we have a decent season where we get 7, maybe 8 wins. And so if we get 7 or 8 wins based on this year's results, we're picking anywhere from 12 to 17 to 18 next year, which puts us out of QB range. The problem is, as I said, you don't know. And I agree with you. The quarterback class for next year on paper looks like it's going to be a great quarterback class, but you just don't know whether they're all going to declare. Look at Arch Manning. He might not even declare next year. He might declare in the 2027 draft. So I think you have to take what's on offer when you can. So I would be disappointed personally if we traded up. I wouldn't mind us trading down. Again, we have this thing in the ideal world. That's what we'd like to see every year. Let's trade down. Let's accumulate more draft picks. But it never seems to happen. But I would not mind. I'm going to respectfully disagree about Shador Sanders as well. I do think that all of his life he's been groomed to be a quarterback in a big media market with his dad. I think he's been quiet. He's never been in any trouble. He's been in 2 winning programs, turned them around. He's a leader. He isn't the greatest quarterback. I see a lot of Tua in him. And when Tua's on his game, I think he's a very good quarterback, a top 10 quarterback, Tua. And I think Shador Sanders comes with a high floor, not necessarily a high ceiling like Cam Ward, but he's certainly got a high floor and he could come in. And I think quite possibly he could start off the bat in game 1. But it's going to be interesting to see how this all goes. Guys, has anyone else got anything to say on drafting quarterbacks in this year's draft?
I mean, like I said before, look, I mean, to me, I mean, we have some. I mean, look, I mean, Cam Ward is definitely the creme de la creme of this quarterback draft class. Other than that, I mean, everyone else is probably a project. I mean, depending on if the Giants do decide to sign Aaron Rodgers to somehow save their lives. I'm not gonna say a season because it's gonna be their lives. I'm talking about Dable and Joe Schoen. I really believe that they should bother with the quarterback and they should worry about the quarterback to draft for next year in 2026. Like when they brought over Josh McCown and then kept him when they decided to draft Sam Darnold. And even though, Sam started right away. They should have let McCown or Bridgewater actually start the season and then bring over Sam to start somewhere in the middle of the year of that particular year. I just felt that this is what they should do. They should. I know how everyone wants a quarterback now. We want our own quarterback now and all that stuff. But what's more important? Do we need a quarterback now, or do we need to solidify the O-line to keep the quarterback upright and also solidify the D-line to make sure that we're back in that top 5, top 10 run-stopping defensive level? So, look, I'm trying to be realistic here. I'm not trying to be pie in the sky, and I'm also not trying to be Mr. Panic Attack here. I want to see this thing done the right way.
Mhm.
Let me just add a point. In terms of trading up for we talked about if we win too many games, then are we too good to get a quarterback? I mean, you look back at the 2017 draft where the Texans moved from 25 to 12 to get Watson. The Chiefs obviously went from 27 to 10 to get Mahomes. Now, obviously, those are a great example. Those are kind of once in a while examples, but they happen in the same year. That's an example of the teams that are, they've got everything else sorted out, just that one quarterback, that quarterback prospect away. And just go be aggressive and go get them. Like I said, we did it with Mark. We traded up to get Mark at 5 in 2009. I think that's a thing you can do. And while I agree, you want to see what the options are, I just don't think it works out for the class and where we sit. We're not sitting at number 1. We're sitting at 7. I think it would be too much to give up to get 7, even though I do like Cam Ward as a prospect.
Yeah, agreed. I think it'll. The Titans have actually come out and already said that they're open for business, and I think the Browns have also said the same thing. But it's going to cost an absolute king's ransom to move up that far. And as everyone has said, we've got other holes to fill. It's quite a fortuitous draft for us because D-line and tight end especially. Those are two areas where we absolutely need strengthening, and this year's draft will be able to do that, and possibly even up to day 3 to strengthen that position. I've got a little question for you here, guys. If we end up trading, is there someone on the Jets already that you think could possibly be up for trade this year before the draft starts, or even on draft night? Paddy, and I'm going to throw this one onto you straight away. Is there someone that you think that could end up getting traded? Beg your pardon.
God, that's a tough question to be thrown out of the blue.
I'll give you my, for instance. I think that Breece Hall is going to be surplus to requirements. This draft is so heavy at running back, and there's some absolute studs. Breece didn't have a good season last year. Agreed. The O-line, the run blocking was awful. He came back off his Achilles. I don't know if you guys can remember, but when Michael Carter was here, there was a couple of times where there was a suggestion that he wasn't as happy as he could be.
Yeah.
We still had the same O-line for Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, who made the running look a lot easier. So I don't know if Breece is carrying an injury or something, but that's where I'm going with this. For me, I could see a scenario where Breece Hall gets traded. But my original question is there any other player that you could see, possibly Quinnen, that could get traded?
Yeah, so Breece, I completely understand and agree with you where you're coming from with Breece Hall. I can see that happening. Just I'm saying, looking over the cap now, I'm looking at the cap hits. Really, the only player, or there's 2 players on this list really that kind of would look beneficial from a financial point of view, which I wouldn't get rid of either of them, would be Quinnen or Vera Tucker. I don't think we would give up either of them. I don't think anyone would trade for CJ Mosley. I mean, I don't know what his situation is. It's got him on here as being, he'd cost us 12 million in dead cap if we got rid of him, if we cut him or traded him. So we wouldn't be doing that as much as I think his time with us is done. And then you're into the kind of the regions of Sauce, Quincy, Quincy would be a player I think teams would be interested in, but if we don't bring back Jamie Sherwood, I can't see us I can't see us letting one walk and then trading the other. So I think there's
Apparently,
players. Go on, sorry.
apparently the Jets are actually in talks with Jamie and Sherwood, which is good to hear. But it's just preliminary talks at the
Exactly.
moment.
Yeah,
I was going to say, Patty, I don't want them to trade Sherwood either. I don't want them to let him go. They need to keep him in the building. They need to keep him on the team. I mean, look, if Mosley stays, great. If Mosley decides to retire, then obviously that's a different kettle of fish, and we'll see what happens there. I mean, I don't know if the dead cap hit would still be there, to bother us. But still, though, I don't want to see Sherwood go. I think he's even said he wants to stay. So I'm glad that there's talks.
Yeah, it's only good news if we can. I mean, obviously, in an ideal world, I'd keep both. I love Quincy. He's been one of my favourite players since we brought him in. I think Sherwood had a big season last year, and I want to see him. I
Yo,
want
I
to see if he
agree.
can either maintain that or even improve on it. But CJ Mosley's an interesting one for me. I think if he's, I mean, I can't see the only option for me is either he retires or we keep him.
My guess is he retires. I do
And
think that he
again,
was actually fit towards the end of last season, but Sherwood was playing so well. The drop off, if Mosley came back, would have been absolutely noticeable. The last couple of games that Mosley played, I'm a huge Mosley fan. God, it was so disheartening watching him getting toasted by tight ends that just can't run, and it's just like,
yeah,
oh my god, another player. I want Rodgers to retire. I want CJ Mosley to retire. I think he will retire. I think he's done. Andres, I've got a question for you. Garrett Wilson. It's been widely rumoured that he's wanted a trade. With everything that's gone on with Aaron Rodgers, whatever you think about Aaron Rodgers, do you see a situation where Garrett Wilson may still want a trade if he ever wanted a trade?
I think that the trade is something that he was kind of, maybe there was talk about it. I think that's not going to be something that comes to fruition. I think you go and pay him, you go and give him the money straight away and get ahead of the market, because it's just going to explode soon with other people. Give him a deal that's reputable to someone else. He's not going to get the kind of Jamar Chase money, but you can give him a deal that's kind of say the Brandon Ayuk money that he got. Obviously, he didn't show up for last season, but Brandon Ayuk's contract, those numbers are pretty much aligned with what you could give Wilson, and you build around him and say you are going to be our guy, and we're going to trust you because he's the kind of guy, he's got the makeup that you want, and he's a fabulous player, and I think he's the guy you want to kind of send a message to the locker room and say, look, we're gonna change things. We're not going to be waiting around to play our players. We're going to pay them. We're going to say you're our star player. You're going to get the money when you deserve it, and it kind of gets other people looking up and saying, if I perform, then this team wants to pay their best players. So I think I wouldn't expect a trade for him. I think it's the opposite. I think we try and tie him up to a long-term deal. I think the Brees one's interesting because you said we could get value because of how good the class is. I think other teams look at it and say, why would we give a pick for Brees Hall when we can get a young draft pick ourselves? So I think that diminishes his market. So I don't know if he goes either. I think the one player that you look to trade is you say, oh, you want Rodgers, you want Devonta Adams, you kind of hold them to ransom, don't give them away for nothing. Even if you get something for them, hold a team that, like, whether it's the Giants or another team that say wants Rodgers and maybe pairs them up with Devonta Adams, you go, hey, here's a small fee. Otherwise, we'll just trade him for a seventh round to someone else, and you can't pair them up. So I think we could be a bit clever with those two and kind of use it to our advantage to get something for them. But I don't think there's any obvious trade candidates on our team in terms of. I think people who are paid high are deservedly so, and I think people who haven't been paid yet are also deservedly so. And maybe they're lined up to be paid. Some of the kind of young star players. So it's going to be interesting how they tackle it this season.
Yeah, I mean, I brought up that you're right in what you're saying about the Brees thing as well. It works both ways. Unless a team is absolutely in love with Brees, and he's a proven NFL back. But I brought up Quinnen earlier on. The reason why I brought up Quinnen, if you cast your mind back, I think it was about a couple of weeks ago, when Rodgers wasn't coming back, and Quinnen put the tweet on Twitter, I guess this is another rebuild kind of thing, and then instantly deleted it, and now he's completely deleted his account. But prior to deleting his account, he took off a DT for the Jets, and now it's just NFL. It did say NFL DT, and now that even that's gone, so the whole account's just been completely deactivated. Which is good. That's the Muji Glenn effect's taking shape, and so I'm liking what I'm seeing from that. But that's why I brought up Quinnen. He is right in what he's saying. It's another regime coming in and another rebuild, kind of. I don't think it's a full rebuild. I think it's a retool rather than a rebuild. But that's why I brought up Quinnen. But no one seems to think that he's going to be. And I know that we would take a bit of a cap hit on him as well. So that's another reason probably why we wouldn't end up trading him anyway. But guys, we're going to wrap this up. It's been an interesting chat. Let's face it, we have got no idea what this regime is going to do in this next few months ahead of us, leading up to the draft especially. Everything is on the table, so it seems. It's going to be interesting. I just want to say thank you very much for joining the show today, Andres. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you again. And Paddy and Daniel. And as always, guys.
Y'all know what to say. On 3. 1, 2, 3.